All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Happy Friday. Thank you for making the effort to join the members meeting this morning. My name's Penny Corner, the Executive Director for the Master Plumbers Association, and I'll be facilitating the meeting today. Please feel free to put any questions that you may have in the chat so that we can go through them as well. Today's session is being recorded. For those members that are unavailable to watch it live, they've got the ability to watch the replay. So we are recording today's session. In terms of the format for today, I will be giving a bit of an advocacy update, and then I'll hand over to Stuart, and Stuart's going to talk a little bit around NCC update and changes to 3500 and 5601. And then I'll hand over to Emma, and she'll give you a little bit of an update in relation to IR and HR. All right, we might go to the first slide. So that was the agenda. Yep. Okay. All right. So just from an advocacy update, you may have seen the announcement that was made by the state government on the 1st of August. So the announcement was around 40,000 householders will benefit from cost of living measures, and they'll be offering rebates of up to $1,000 on offer to buy and install energy efficient appliances for eligible households. So this is $22 million. It's a $22 million program, which includes rebates for the purchase of washing machines, fridges, dryers, dishwashers, air conditioners, and of course, hot water systems. And if we go to the next slide, we'll show you the breakdown that's available. So each of the appliances are listed there, and obviously the one that's relevant is the solar and heat pump and hot water systems for you as plumbers. So we have a standard income earner can get up to $800 off the rebate, and a low income earner can get up to $1,000 off the rebate. Now, the conditions of a low income are all listed up on the website through the government, so you can look on there if people are eligible. Okay, so the rebate will open on the 4th of September, so next month. It is only one rebate per household, and the rebates provided under the program cannot be higher than the total cost to purchase, install an eligible appliance. The maximum amount is 1,500 rebates will be available for energy efficient hot water heaters and solar heat pumps. And the details are available at the Energy Savings Program on the Department of Energy and Public Works website. We have also been in contact with the department in relation to this announcement. So we have asked them to make sure that when this work is getting done, that it is being installed by a licensed person with the endorsement of solar and heat pump as well on their license. And we've also requested that Form 4s also be provided as evidence to make sure the Form 4s are actually being submitted before the rebates apply. Now, the consumer can still apply for the STCs as well through the federal government. This is just a specific program that's being offered for Queenslanders here. Also, we have been advised that it is only available. It is available for people that. Sorry. In terms of the rebate, there was a question about if you're a landlord and you wanted to purchase an appliance to install, would you have the ability to do that into a rental property? And the feedback that we've received is that the rebate will apply to appliances if the applicant is a resident of the dwelling, and only one rebate will be available per household. So as more information comes to light on this program, as I mentioned, it has only been announced this week. We will put information up in our newsletter to let people know. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. So one of the other items that we've been working on with the government is around reviewing unfair terms and conditions in contracts. So this is something as an association that we are very passionate about, and we want to make sure that it's that these unjust terms are removed from contracts in terms of the risk that it puts on our members is just unacceptable. So we're part of the, there was a ministerial subcommittee that was created to review specific clauses. And the clauses that they're specifically looking at include indemnity, defects rectification, warranties for design and accuracy, wrongful termination deemed to be for convenience, deeds of release, and notice before cashing in bank guarantees. So these are some of the clauses. There's about 10 in total that the government is reviewing. And so they've come to us and asked us to provide feedback. So we're currently reviewing the documents and working with our major contractors on this particular matter, getting their feedback so that we can provide real life examples of what's actually happening out there in the marketplace. So that's just a little bit of an update in relation to fairness in contracting. I'll go on to security of payments and project trust accounts. So you would be aware the project trust accounts for contracts priced 1 million or more were delayed till March 2025. So they were supposed to commence in March 2023 this year, but they were pushed back. And also project trust accounts for contract price 3 million and more were also delayed, and they've been moved through to March 2025. Now, the reason for the delays specifically are about the lack of software that's currently available in this space. So the government agreed to set up a steering committee to really look at it, and we are part of the steering committee. And we're really looking at the trust account framework, and we're looking how we can clarify and simplify to make it easy for people to utilize, and also looking specifically at the technology solutions out there. So government's been approached by a number of different providers who think that they may have something that would be suitable or are currently in the process of creating something. So we're looking at those different technology solutions to make sure that it is going to be easy to utilize and implement within businesses. So that's just a little bit of an update in relation to security of payments. We'll move on to the next item, which is quite topical at the moment in relation to gas. So you would have seen last week the Victorian government announced that they would be banning new natural gas connections from 2024. It's obviously sent shockwaves throughout Australia. This was a great opportunity, although we had already previously been working with Minister de Brenny here in Queensland, who's the Minister for Energy and Public Works, Procurement, Renewables and Hydrogen. And we've been working with him and his department in this particular area. And the minister came out and said that natural gas will not be banned in Queensland, and that government will work with MPAQ and other stakeholders to reduce emissions from our gas network. Now, this is fantastic news for all of our members here in Queensland because we want to make sure that natural gas is still being able to be utilised, and we want to be looking at renewable gases as well, such as biomethane and hydrogen. So that's a bit of an update in relation to gas. We'll move on to the home warranty scheme. So the home warranty scheme, as you would all be aware, it's compulsory for residential buildings project valued at more than 3,000 that you pay a home warranty insurance. And you pay this direct to the QBCC, and it must be paid before the work actually begins. So it covers the homeowner for any loss if something goes wrong during the building process. It does not cover any commercial buildings at all, only domestic. Now, currently there is a review of the scheme at the moment, and we've received a lot of feedback from members in regards to specifically the value. The $3,000 threshold has not increased, I believe, in more than 18 years. And so the government is currently considering whether the $3,000 threshold is the best level of coverage that is required here in Queensland. So we are part of a subcommittee, the Home Warranty Committee, that is looking at this and providing real life examples. We're also aware of concerns when people are working on body corporate buildings and they potentially doing roofing work, say, and it's capturing more than one apartment or more than one dwelling, that it's causing issues where they have to pay home warranty insurance for more than one dwelling. So this obviously makes sometimes the cost quite prohibitive. So yeah, we are part of that review, and we're hoping that we'll be able to provide a further update in the coming months in relation to home warranty. Okay, we'll go on to the next one, which is around the Diploma of Hydraulic Services. So currently, the Diploma of Hydraulic Services is unavailable, and we have been advised that this has raised significant concerns within the industry. This course is a licensed requirement from the QBCC, but it's not currently being taught here in Queensland. It was, or it is, being taught at TAFE New South Wales. However, they're not accepting any new applicants. They're only working with their current cohort of students that they have. In order to undertake this work, you must hold this qualification to comply with the laws. Otherwise, penalties can be enforced. We sent out a survey to licensees to obtain some interest in the course. So I'd just like to say thank you to those that made the effort to fill in the survey. We do really appreciate it. So we're currently working with government to find an appropriate solution. So we understand that this is an issue for some of our members, and just wanted to let you know and provide an update that it is something that we're working on at the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to provide a solution soon. Okay, and finally, I'll just go on to the last slide. So the Department of Energy and Public Works is seeking expression of interest for the Development Tribunal referees, and basically the purpose is to hear about appeals within the building, plumbing, infrastructure charges, and other related matters. So they're looking for expertise in this area. If anybody is interested in applying, applications close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 25th of August, and we put out information in our newsletter on Monday if you're looking for that. You will be paid remuneration in accordance with the government procedures if it is something that you are successful with. So at the moment, they're just doing expressions of interest, and the full details about it are all available on the website. All right, now I'm going to hand over to Stuart, and Stuart's going to talk you through around the National Construction Code. Thanks, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Penny. Good morning, everyone. My name's Stuart McConnell. I'm a technical officer and trainer here at Master Plumbers Queensland. I wanted to talk about a few of the changes that have occurred this year within the industry. It's been quite a big year for changes for us as plumbers and gas fitters. We'll start off with the National Construction Code. As you may or may not be aware, the National Construction Code was released in 2022. It commenced on the 1st of May 2023. So as of the 1st of May 2023, there's been quite a few changes that have occurred. One of the biggest changes for us would probably be the reference standards. So the Plumbing Code of Australia, which is volume 3 of the National Construction Code, calls upon a new suite of deemed to satisfy provisions in the form of AS NZS 3500. We're now running with 2021. That's our referenced standard. One of the other big changes within the National Construction Code that could possibly affect the plumbing industry would be falls to floor wastes. Floor wastes installed anywhere such as bathroom floors and laundry floors now need to be graded to prevent the spilling of water into other parts of the building. It's worth noting floor wastes are only a requirement in the following situations. So showers, in a room containing a urinal, in a Class 2 free building or Class 4 part of a building, a bathroom or laundry located at any level above a sole occupancy or public space. Floor wastes are not a requirement in a Class 1 building, so you may find some builders looking for alternate forms to discharge fixtures to the sanitary draining, as in direct to drain. That way they don't need to grade the floors in those areas. There are some other changes within the National Construction Code that won't come into effect until October this year. There's not much that's really relevant to plumbing and drainage, so I think we can certainly gloss over that for now. I'll quickly run through some of the changes to our 3500 suite. We're obviously, as I mentioned, we're on 3500 2021. As you know, there's 4 parts to that standard. I'll work through each part of the standard and just run through some of the changes. So we'll start off with part 1, water services. A number of the backflow provisions have now been elevated to the Plumbing Code of Australia, section B5, cross-contamination control. And what this has done is removed duplication from the Plumbing Code and the 3500 Part 1. Appendix F has now been deleted from 3500 Part 1, and all remaining backflow provisions are located in section 4. Jointing requirements for plastic pipe have now been clarified and expanded to allow for different methods. Changes to the requirements to mark pipes in commercial buildings. Changes to the requirements for the installation of water services in metal framed walls, bringing it in line with the National Association of Steel Framed Housing. Clause 5.4 relating to bushfire zones has been removed. This is in anticipation for bushfire areas being elevated to the Plumbing Code of Australia, which will be coming. Section 12 relating to special fixtures has also been removed. Now that the backflow requirements are in the PCA, listing a few examples wasn't really required. So watermark specifications should identify any backflow requirements for those special fixtures. Moving on to part 2, sanitary drainage and plumbing. A range of materials that can be used for wet wells has now been amended to include prefabricated wells. Once again, the changes to the requirements for marking pipes in commercial buildings. Changes to connection requirements for drains at grade. This is probably one of the biggest changes that's affecting people now. And this is to do with the requirements limited to 100 mil branch drains, now requiring a 15-degree incline on that connection. The requirement for a commercial dishwasher drain to connect to a disconnected gully with a 10-metre discharge has now been removed. An appendix has been added providing guidance on the requirements of AS 2870. This is to do with flexible connections for plastic drainage systems in highly reactive soils. So Appendix G, I believe, has now been added, and there is lots of information in there with regards to expansion joints and knuckle joints and the like. Changes to the number of pressure attenuators required to allow for more flexible options. Part 3 is our stormwater drainage standard, and there's been a few changes to that too. Design rainfall intensities are now expressed in terms of annual exceedance probabilities, AEP values. These reflect the practice of the Bureau of Meteorology. The 5-minute duration rainfall intensities for representative places in Australia, shown in table D1, have now been updated to show the latest values from the Bureau also. The range of materials, once again, that can be used for wet wells has been expanded to allow prefabricated wells. Changes to the requirement for marking pipes in commercial buildings. That change is occurring in each of our standards. Moving on to part 4, which is our heated water services. Very similar again to cold water services. Jointing methods have been clarified to allow for different methods. Changes to the requirement for marking pipes in commercial buildings. Changes to the requirements of water services in steel framed walls. The separation between above ground heated water, pipework and electrical services has been reduced. And what that's done is it's brought it in line with 3500 Part 1 and Auto AS/NZS 3000. To reduce waste of water and energy, changes have been made to the requirements for circulated water systems, including water meters and entry points for heated water, thermal insulation for non-circulatory heated water piping, and maximum capacities of any dead legs from any branch offtake. Appendix Q has been added to provide a guide to determine the capacity of dead legs and estimated wait times. and heated water temperature control provisions have now been elevated to the PCA in Part B2. Again, this will avoid any conflict between the PCA and AS 3500 Part 4. It's worth mentioning that the changes to with regards to the PCA and the standards has also called upon a new backflow standard. So we were previously referencing ASNZS 2845 Part 3 2010 as our backflow test appendix. Since 3500 Part 1 simply references the standard with no date, the current standard, or the most up-to-date standard, would always be the default. So since the publication of the previous edition of 3500, which was 2018, a new 2845 Part 3 was published. ASNZS 2845 Part 3 2020 is now the reference standard for backflow test appendices. Currently, the official government Form 9 has not been updated. So what this means is that it's still referencing the 2010 standard rather than the 2020 edition. Once that 2020 edition is updated on the government form, obviously your test procedures are going to have to comply with that standard. There are a few changes within that standard. The test procedure, for example, for a reduced pressure zone device or an RPZ has changed ever so slightly. And the test appendix letters have also changed. Those that hold the endorsement to maintain and service backflow prevention devices, you'll be pleased to know that MPAQ has updated its test cards. So if you don't have the updated test cards as yet, they are available on the website. Just like the older cards, they'll fit into your toolbox and they're waterproof. And they'll obviously reference the correct standard for you moving forward. The next big change this year has been the end of the transition period for ASNZS 5601 Part 1 2022. So our gas installation standard. On the 30th of September 2022, 5601 Part 1 2022 was published. And it was given a 6-month transition period, which would take us through to the 30th of March this year. During that 6-month period, we could still resort to 5601 2013, but as of the 30th of March, ASNZS 5601 Part 1 2022 is our reference gas installation standard. I'll run through some of the key changes that have occurred within that standard. Brazing is now permitted within 1 metre of a joint with non-metallic components. The installation of multi-layer pipe above ground, external to buildings, is now prohibited. There's a new requirement for the isolation in installations for educational institutions. There's also a new requirement for the isolation of installations in commercial kitchens. Provision for emergency isolation on multi-layer pipe installations. There's a new drawing for consumer pipework located in cavities. This drawing comes from AS 3500, so the plumbers have obviously got a very good understanding of that already, but it's now in line on the gas standards too. Revised requirements for the locations of flue terminals located under a covered area in a recess or a balcony. Gas appliance flues can no longer terminate within a roof space in Australia. There is an increased clearance requirement between domestic cooking appliances and range hoods. There's a new requirement for the freestanding commercial catering equipment with connections underneath the appliance. There's a new requirement for the connections of freestanding commercial catering equipment using hose assemblies. Restrictions on the use of semi-rigid connectors in the installation of commercial catering equipment. There's a new requirement for the protection of a combustible surface adjacent to any commercial catering equipment. The pipe sizing graphs and tables have been updated and they're a little bit less conservative to previous editions. there's an addition of Appendix K, which is the effect of altitude on gas pressure for high-rise buildings. And there's a couple of new definitions, one for the fire safety system and one for an ignition source. I guess one of the biggest talking points of the changes to 5601 would probably be clause 5.2.11, the provision for fire emergency isolation on multi-layer pipe installations. So any property that's got a multi-layer pipe installation, so PEX pipe for a gas line, now has to have provision for emergency isolation. In a class 1 building, so a domestic house, we can meet the requirements of this clause by installing what we call an excess flow valve on the installation. The valves are generally sized using the nominal flow of gas in cubic meters per hour. The excess flow valve generally is going to shut off about 30 to 45% above that nominal flow. So in the case of a fire and a fire compromising your PEX pipe work, because it will melt it very quickly, as soon as that gas starts to spill out into the roof space or wherever it's compromised, the excess flow valve will shut down the gas supply and, in essence, not add any more fuel to the fire. Excuse the pun. To work out the cubic meterage of gas that your system's going to use, you're going to need to add up the megajoule rating of the system. Every appliance has got a megajoule rating, so you'll need to add all of those up, and you'll need to divide it by the heat value of the gas to find out how many cubic meters of gas it's going to use. So going back to jog a few memories, natural gas would be 38 megajoules per cubic meter and 96 megajoules per cubic meter for the LPG. Once you've got the cubic meterage of gas that is going to be consumed per hour, you can then size the valve using the manufacturer's guide. It's probably worth noting that obviously as MPAQ members, you've got access to the standards via SAI Global. You can download a standard onto your device and print it out as many times as you want. Please log in and update your standards if you haven't done that as yet. And once you've had a little look through, as I say, it's quite a brief run through of the changes. Obviously, I'm fairly limited for time. If there's any questions that you might have, feel free to reach out to myself or anyone in the technical team. MPAQ's also released some ASNZS mini sessions. They're available online. And what they're doing is they're covering, there's 4 different courses there, and they cover all the changes to the 3500 suite. So it's a very comprehensive guide, certainly worthwhile taking the opportunity to go through those changes if you haven't already. Thanks for updating the slide. So I'll take the opportunity to mention our new nationally accredited course that we are currently delivering. MPAQ is proud to be offering MSM 00019, operate a drain cleaning system. Bit of a mouthful, we refer to it as the JETA course here. It's a nationally recognised skill set comprising of 4 units of competency. And what it does is it allows plumbers to operate a Class B jetting machine independently. It's legislated in AS 4233 Part 1, 2013 for high pressure water jetting systems, that anyone operating a Class B machine shall have the appropriate training delivered by an RTO based on high pressure water jetting units of competency. It's also a requirement under the Work Health and Safety Act 2011 that the person conducting a business or undertaking must ensure, so far as reasonably practicable, the health and safety of workers and also the public. This includes the provision of any information, training, instruction or supervision that's necessary to protect all persons from risk to their health and safety arising from work carried out by the business. So I guess in layman's terms, as a business owner, it's a requirement to provide the relevant training to your staff to ensure that they won't get hurt or a member of the public doesn't get hurt by operating a jet machine. Fairly dangerous units, and serious injury can occur. So I guess one of the biggest questions is, how do you know if your jet machines are Class A or a Class B? Generally, on your data plate for your machine, we'll have the pressure in PSI, and we'll also have a flow rate. Now, there's a basic equation that we can do to work out the bar literage of the system. What we'll need to do is take that PSI and we'll need to divide it by 14.5. That's a constant, and that's going to take us to a pressure in bar. Once we have a pressure in bar, we'll multiply it by our flow rate, and it will give us what we call a bar literage. Anything above 5,600 bar litres would classify the machine as a Class B unit. So a typical example of that would be a 5,000 PSI machine with a 21 litre per minute flow rate. So 5,000 divided by 14.5 would give us 344. 344 times the flow rate of 21 litres gives us a bar literage of 7,224 bar litres. So that would classify that machine as a Class B machine. Anything below that 5,600 would be classified as a Class A machine. And if you are running one of those machines, you wouldn't be required to sit this course. Generally speaking, most plumbers will go for a high-powered setup, putting it in that Class B bracket, which is why we identified that industry could really do with this course here in Queensland. The course is mostly safety-based. It's not going to teach your employees how to unblock a drain. The chances are they're already out doing that. It is, however, though, going to teach them how to operate it safely and to abide by the current Work and Health and Safety Act, and also the Australian standard covering water jetting. Upon completion of the course, obviously they'll get a statement of attainment. It is a nationally recognised course, but they'll also receive a medical alert card. This is part of the Australian standards. It is a card that needs to be kept on their person while they operate the machine. And what it will do is it will indicate that A, they're fully qualified and licensed as such to operate it. But it will also indicate any possible water injection injuries that could have occurred from using the machine. The Jetta course kind of leads nicely into the MPAQ safety system. You may or may not be aware of the MPAQ safety system. It's a free cloud-based work health and safety system that MPAQ offers its members. It's designed to provide a clear, quick and compliant system to manage work health and safety in your business. As mentioned earlier, obviously the obligations of an employer are fairly strict with regards to health and safety. Failure to sort of not comply with these rules can obviously get you in a lot of trouble. MPAQ Safety gives you the option to generate safe work method statements, or SWMs, in less than 5 minutes. And what that's going to enable is making sure your employees have risk assessed a job before starting. They've acknowledged any possible safety concerns and hopefully put some measures into place to make the job a bit safer. Sometimes even acknowledging risks and hazards can really help with getting home at night and making sure everyone's safe. That pretty much ties up my talk for today. Thanks very much for your time. If you'd like to go into anything a little bit deeper that I've spoken about, please feel free to reach out. As I say, I've gone through fairly fast just to keep the time down. But yeah, thanks ever so much, and I'll pass you back to Penny.
Great, thanks, Stuart. That was a very informative presentation, so thank you. Okay, now I'll hand over to Emma. She's going to give a bit of an update in relation to IR and HR. Thanks, Em.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. So yeah, today we'll just run through some of the changes that have come about following the Secure Jobs, Better Pay legislation that passed in December last year. There's also been some award updates. And we might just move to the next slide if we can, just so we've got the information. Perfect. So the first area that I wanted to talk about, given that we're in now the second half of the year, is around the change to the Plumbing and Fire Sprinklers Awards, and pretty much all awards across all modern awards. So that's over 122 awards. The temporary shutdown provisions have changed from 1 May. So that would be if you have a shutdown over the Christmas period, how you manage your annual leave for your employees, you've kind of got to be thinking about now almost. So if you plan to have, say, a 2-week period over the Christmas period, you need to notify your employees at least 8 weeks out from that time frame. And if an employee doesn't have enough leave to cover that whole time, given, like, granted there is 3 public holidays during that period, oh, excuse me, sorry, then they would be on annual leave for those other days. If they don't have enough annual leave, in previous years, the employer would just say, well, you'd then just be on leave without pay. That's your prerogative, that's your management of your own annual leave. Where the legislation and the awards now say is that the employer and employee have to reach written agreement for the employee to be on leave without pay during that time. And if that written agreement can't occur, then it might be that the employer will have to pay annual leave in advance, and then the employee continues employment until they've recouped that annual leave, meaning they can't take any more annual leave in the new year until they've paid it back, essentially. We've updated our employment contracts to put provisions around this clause in those employment contracts so that it allows for this particular situation. It also is worth noting that if you have a new staff member that starts between now and your Christmas shutdown period, that you're talking with them about the Christmas shutdown period almost during, well, pretty much during recruitment process, because they're your employees that are potentially not going to have enough annual leave entitlement for the whole shutdown. And so you want to be talking to them so it's not an out of the blue occasion when you do announce it at the 8-week or more mark. It also is uncertain at the moment that if, say, an employee has 4 weeks entitlement now, and then come November, they want to take a 4-week annual leave period, whether the employer can actually say, no, you can't take that 4-week period because we know that we've got our annual leave coming, our temporary shutdown coming up in Christmas, so you're going to need your annual leave down there. The reason it's uncertain about whether that can be allowed at the moment is because it's a new piece of legislation, and we'll see some cases come out of that as sort of it gets closer towards Christmas this year. So if you've got any questions about it, the more you can communicate with your staff about your shutdown, the better. It also does mean that if you say you're going to have a 2-week period, but as it gets closer, you're exhausted and you really want to have a 3-week period, if you're within that 8-week notice period, you can't change it. You're locked in. Whatever you've notified at the 8-week mark, that's what it's got to be. You can't change it last minute. Unless you reach mutual agreement with your employees, I would get that in writing. Another area that we've got, and this is more just, I guess, a service offering for members, is we've got our employer essential courses. So these are broken up into 5 different topics. They're all available on our website. They're subsidised through CSQ, and they are fully online, self-paced. You can progress through them at your own pace or after hours. There's no documents that have to be completed. During the course, you basically get a couple of multiple choice questions where you have to provide an answer. And that just shows, I guess, your understanding of what the content is. So they're broken up into courses about employment contracts, employment entitlement, so that's around this annual leave and other sick leave. And employment entitlements also has information in there about family and domestic violence leave, which I'll touch on in a second. Other courses are plumbing industry specific employment requirements. So the specifics of the plumbing award, because it's all complexities, performance management, and also bullying, harassment and discrimination. And just to touch on, there is, because of this secure jobs, better pay, there's some information about the sexual harassment as well, in terms of an employer has to have a positive duty to prevent and eliminate sexual harassment in their workplace from now on. So that means having regular discussions about it, policies, training, even external training, and also when an incident does come up, that it's addressed immediately. It's not left to linger. So moving on to the next slide, we've got our information there about the family and domestic violence leave, which we mentioned before. So that's now come into play for all businesses. They had a staged approach where businesses with 15 or more employees, the leave commenced from 1 February. Where smaller businesses with 14 or less employees, where the leave didn't come in till the 1st of August. Now, all businesses have the entitlement of family and domestic violence leave. So this leave is basically where an employee is in a family and domestic violence situation and they need to take leave to get out of the situation that they're in. So that might be police, going to notify the police, they might be attending court hearings, going to talk to solicitors, housing requirements, could be talking to financial advisors, and those are to be done within, I guess, working hours, whereas a lot of studies have found that people in these situations, they aren't able to access the support outside of hours. On that, but just making sure that on your pay slips, you don't list that it's family and domestic violence leave, because obviously if somebody is the perpetrator and they're managing all of the finances, if they see that on a pay slip, that's obviously going to raise some red flags. So it's 10 days paid leave per annum. So how that rolls out is from the 1st of August until the employee's anniversary date, they will get 10 days, and then it will continue rolling out from their anniversary date. So if somebody started their employment on the 1st of October, say, they would have 10 days from the 1st of August to the 1st of October, and then their new 10 days would start from the 1st of October. Employees don't have to use any other leave entitlement first, and it's applicable to full-time, part-time and casual employees. And it can be from day one of employment that they can access their full 10 days. The employer can ask what they're going to do, and there is avenues to be able to get evidence. One of the evidence can be a statutory declaration. So you can ask your employees that they go make a statutory declaration and get that signed off so that you've got some sort of evidence to pay them. So if you've got any queries about that, certainly give us a shout. Another big area of change is in relation to the paid parental leave. So that's through Services Australia, which was previously Centrelink. So now the paid parental leave entitlement, which came into effect from 1 July, is that collectively a family can have up to 20 weeks of paid parental leave, and that's paid at the national minimum wage rate. So not the award rates, the national minimum rate. Previously, it was 18 weeks to the primary carer of the child, being either the birth child or the adopted child, and 2 weeks to dad and partner pay. That's now merged together to get the total of 20 weeks. And there's some rules around how it can be taken. So employees now can take 2 lots of 10 weeks each. They can do, one gets 12 weeks, one gets 8 weeks. It's basically they can split it up however they want. They have to apply through Services Australia and through their MyGov to be able to access it, and they have to meet some eligibility criteria. Your role as an employer is if an employee is going or wanting to have 8 weeks or more in one block as their first block of leave, you would then have to administer that payment and you would get reimbursed through the government. If an employee only wants to take 2 weeks now, 2 weeks in 6 weeks' time, 2 weeks further down the track, that will be fully administered through the government, through Services Australia. The whole paid leave must be taken within the first 24 months of the birth or adoption. So that could be an employee initially takes 8 weeks and then they go back to work and then they might take another 3 weeks upon agreement with their employer. So that's quite a big change because there's a lot of employees, especially now where babies are born now or adoption is taking place now. It's kind of in that confusing time whether it's applicable or not. But it was a hard line, 1 July, any baby born after 1 July or adopted, then these new entitlements apply. So if you do have an employee that comes to you and wants to take 2 weeks off, because they're not the primary carer, but they're wanting to have time off to support their partner, then they would be potentially leave without pay from your business and then getting paid through the government. And you would negotiate and talk to your employee about that. Another area that affects that we get quite a lot of calls around is in regards to pay secrecy. So that came about through the Secure Jobs Better Pay legislation amendment in December last year, which I touched on before. So that's just a reminder that if an employee wants to talk about their pay with another employee, they can't be reprimanded for it. Previously, you could put in your employment contracts that it was to be kept confidential, but that's no longer the case. Employees can freely talk about it now. So certainly, if you've got any questions, do give me a shout. We can talk it through. We've got the employer essentials on our website. I certainly encourage members to get access to those. There is a small fee for each of those courses, but there's quite a good amount of information in each course that hopefully you come away with some new tips on little bits of knowledge. Thanks, Pen.
Great. Thank you, Emma, for providing that update. A lot to take in there around those changes. All right, we might see if anyone has any questions, if you want to just raise your hand or anything, if anyone has anything. No, everybody's quiet today. All right, well, we might wrap up. Thank you very much to everyone for making the effort to attend. We really appreciate it. If there's specific topics that you would like to have at our next members meeting, if you could just send through an email and let us know, and we'll look to table those at the meeting. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thank you so much for your time. Bye.